Awesome. So for those who don't know me, my name is Desiree. I'm with the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, and I'll be facilitating today's meeting. I'll go over the agenda a little bit. So first, after our welcome, we'll have a general update from Lynn Rodriguez. Next, David Gromberg will give an update for the Weather Service this season. And next, Chris Dons will have an update from the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative Ojai project. And finally, the county fire activities in Ojai Valley. Celine Mooney will have an update on that. And then we'll have some closing remarks and time for questions. I ask anyone who has any questions to throw them in the Q&A or the chat, and hold the questions until everyone is finished presenting. Okay, with that, I think we're good to give an update. Lynn, if you would like to jump in. Sorry, you're muted.
Hi. If you can stop sharing, I'll share my screen.
Yes. Stop sharing.
So good morning, everyone. Nice to be at the meeting. It's been a while, I think, since I've been able to attend a council meeting. So good to see some of you on the screen. And I'm going to give an update on a few things and welcome any input or questions from anybody along the way. Trying to start my, there we go. Just for anybody that might not know who I am, Lynn Rodriguez, the Watersheds Coalition of Ventura County. And I am managing the regional program, which includes the 3 watershed committees as well. I don't manage them, but I mean, it's the regional program is kind of the umbrella for the 3 watershed committees. And I like to give periodic updates to the group on what's happening in the larger program. And I'm just going to say I am really looking forward to when we can be back in person for meetings at the watershed level and the full. Actually, we do plan to have an in-person meeting of the next general membership meeting of WCVC. So that will, I'm hoping people will come. We'll give a hybrid option, but I do hope people will come in person for that. So get started with my updates. I know some of you attended the general membership meeting we had last week or 2 weeks ago. So some of this will be a little overlap, but still wanted to share some of this information again to those of you that weren't there. This is kind of an exciting year for our program for integrated regional water management. It's the 20th anniversary. The program started with Proposition 50 in 2002. So we've actually, reflecting back on the past 20 years, there's been a lot of work going on in this region and in each watershed. It's exciting to look at how much collaboration we've had around projects and around working together on programs. And the agendas at these watershed council meetings are always so full of great sharing and information. And the council does stand alone from the IRWM program, but a lot of what you're doing in the council is related to the work we do, across the region. So just kind of a shout out to this place that we find ourselves after 20 years. So just wanted to give a couple of updates on the funding that we're operating under right now with IRWM grants. We do have still some active projects in Prop 84. I can't recall if there's any in the Ventura River Watershed that are still open grants, but we are now underway with Proposition 1, Round 1. And the project that was approved for this watershed, which was back in, the approval came through in 2020, is the East Side to West Side Waterline Interconnect project. And I don't know, I'm not going to try to look at who's logged in right now. I'm not sure if anybody from the city, if Jenny Trebo or if anybody else from the city is on, Betsy Cooper or Gina Dorrington, but I understand that project is moving along pretty well. And there's some real interconnections, if you will, between that project and some other projects that are happening that I'll talk about with round 2. So that's kind of the focus these days on a lot of our larger scale infrastructure projects for drought and water resilience are interconnections and interties. And I think that those are rather expensive projects, so it's appropriate to be seeking funding from IRWM for that, as well as the local investments and other grants that help fund them. So this east side to west side connection is just to help shore up the between the west and east side of the city of Ventura to allow for water connections back and forth. I think somewhat to do with blending. Various water quality is not as good on the east side as it is on the west side. And so that project is a 2-part project. There's another aspect of it that's being funded with another grant. Is there anybody from the city on? Desiree, can you tell?
I cannot see while you're sharing. Let me.
Oh, okay. And well, if anybody from the city is on, feel free to jump in. And then moving on to Prop 1 Round 2. And for those of you that are not familiar with this grant program or with the IRWM grant program in general, this is our 3rd proposition. So we started with Prop 50 and then Prop 84. Prop 84, we had 4 rounds of funding, and then Prop 1 is the final one, and we've had 2 rounds. This is the final round. And with that, we have nothing else out there on the horizon to specifically fund IRWM projects, which are projects that are multi-benefit, often multi-party or collaborations with other entities integrated across the watershed or across the region. So in our final round of funding, we are getting $10 million and some $10,380,000 for a variety of projects, which I've listed all the projects here. I only listed the Ventura River Watershed project for round 1, just to keep it quicker. But for this one, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the other projects. And as I said, there's an emphasis on interties and interconnections now, which is going to go a long way to help all 3 watersheds be sustainable and resilient and have reliable supplies, especially during emergencies or droughts, when we can share groundwater across the region or share state water and surface water. That gives us a lot more options during emergencies. So the 2 projects that are benefiting the Ventura River in round 2, one is the city of Ventura's component of the larger Callegas-Ventura interconnection, which is a project that worked with Callegas, who is very dependent on, or they solely import state water through, basically one connection. And this interconnect is going to help connect across to the other 2 watersheds and provide a lot of backup opportunity for them. And then, of course, for the other 2 watersheds as well. So Callegas is taking one of the components. So that project is really one project, but it's been split in 2. And Callegas Municipal Water District will manage one of the aspects of that, and the city of Ventura is managing the other. And so you may be aware of the long environmental review process and the pipeline alignment studies that have been underway for a number of years for that project. And once that project is completed, and I know the city has secured and is looking for additional funding to cover the costs of their part of the project. And so that's one of the projects. The other one is the intertie between Casitas Municipal Water District and the County of Santa Barbara, being able to share water from Cachuma over to the Carpinteria area, and then for the ability for Carpinteria to share as needed, share water from their access to the State Water Project and other sources. So it's a multi-benefit, or rather a mutually beneficial project for both counties. And they also have, that's a fairly expensive project, but they're getting enough kind of seed money to leverage in this grant to leverage other funding that they have available. I know we have people from Casitas. So Kelly, I don't know, or Tyrone, if you want to say anything about this project. Nope. Okay, so that just kind of rounds out or wraps up my discussion about round two. We do have one DAC project, disadvantaged community project, that's being funded out of the DAC set aside for round two. And recall that that is actually for the whole funding area. We have a whole funding area set aside, and our share allowed us to have $1.8 million for a project in Nyland Acres community adjacent to Oxnard. And that project is a new well that will help provide backup source of water for that mutual, which serves an underserved community. And then we have a backup project in case any of the projects on our list fail to move forward for some reason. And that project is the City of Camarillo AMI project. Are there any questions about round two or about any of these projects? Yes, everybody's very quiet this morning. Okay. So also just sharing that there's a lot of state funding available right now, as most of you know, coming out of the state budget. A lot of it focused on drought relief and safe and affordable drinking water for underserved communities. So one of those projects is the Urban Community Drought Relief Program, and they are accepting applications, I believe, now. And I know some of you on this call are applying for some of that funding. And I think others in the county were successful in receiving funding from round one, or the first round of that urban multi-benefit grant. There is a drought relief set aside for underserved communities in that for our whole funding area. And so we received funding for 2 projects also in Nyland Acres, drought relief projects. So it's really been a boost to our region to have this extra funding out of the state budget. This year, there's also the small communities grant funding came back from last year. This time, that one is not accepting, I don't believe is accepting new applications. They're going to try to make it through the backlog of projects that were submitted for funding last year. And I think maybe some entities in this watershed, I believe, possibly the Casitas Mutual Water Company, who I did receive funding in the first round. I don't know if they're applying this time. So we're really benefiting from these extra state resources, and very soon we'll start seeing funding from the Inflation Reduction Act funds that come through the federal government. So we have a lot more opportunities now than just the IRWM grant program, which is
Hey, Lynn, I think it looks like you're frozen over there. Let me see.
I know some of you have probably been getting Bureau of Reclamation and other funding for your projects. So we're in a time of plenty in terms of resources. Are there any questions about any of the grant information? Are you monitoring the chat, Desiree? For Q&A?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Nothing in the Q&A and the chat either. And if anyone would like to speak, just go ahead and raise your hand.
Yeah, okay. Well, then I'll just quickly move on to, and I'm not going to go over all of this because I do know a lot of you were at the general membership meeting, but we are getting towards the end of this Water Talks program with a lot of funding for outreach engagement, needs assessments, and project development and technical assistance. We've extended this grant through, we've requested DWR to extend the grant through the end of next year. And we've been we're working to continue and complete things from task 4, which included developing some projects for future funding and continuing to provide technical assistance. We're also doing some outreach and engagement with our tribal representatives across the county. And there will be some tribal engagement training workshops put on early next year by Sacred Places Institute based in LA. And so stay tuned for information about how to participate in those meetings. And One specific report I wanted to share is we just recently had a great outreach event sponsored by Cause, whose office has offices in Santa Paula, and they hosted an event for the community that was actually very well attended back in October. And it was close engagement around or conversations with community members and elected officials, city council members and school board members about climate adaptation within the community of Santa Paula, and specifically looking at maps and locations and plotting where people would like to see improvements made to help adapt to climate change, things like increased flooding on some of the paths and roads that people use to walk their kids to school or just to get out and recreate. Also hydration stations, tree planting for shade. High temperatures are one of the largest impact areas that we would expect to see that affects a lot of things, including water use. So that was a really productive meeting. I think we had about 30 members of the public and the elected officials and other staff. So we'll be doing one of those on the Ventura Avenue, similar event. And if you see this on the right, there's a toolkit. These are materials that were developed for each of our 9 underserved communities involved in the grant. And we updated the Santa Paula Water Talks Toolkit and distributed that at the event. And we'll do the same thing with the one for Ventura Avenue, because these were developed 2 years ago and needed a little updating. If you want more information about, I thought I had the URL on there. There's a website, Water Talks website, which after I'm done, I'll post in the chat the address for that. You can look at all the toolkits, look at information about all the past events, and to see what we've been up to. I'm going to share, send this to Desiree to share with people if they want more information about the DACI grant. So I'm not going to go into any further detail on that. Just general IRWM updates. We've been having, regular steering committee meetings and watershed meetings across the region, and the last general membership was a couple weeks ago, and then we have another one on January. We've been very busy working with our underserved communities. One of the big things that we're working on right now is, well, okay, let me get into this. We just updated our map portal, which is how you enter projects that you want to be included in the IRWM plan or be considered for funding. We've added another general sort of generic project input form on our portal that is for projects that are not seeking any particular grant, but just to be included in the plan. But I encourage you to go to the portal and check out, there's a lot of layers there. There's a lot of good data, and it's a useful tool if you're planning projects or just want more information. So you just go and check out the layers that are available. Most of them are coming from county sources, and land uses, waterways, sensitive habitat areas, groundwater basins, groundwater sustainability agencies, water district boundaries, things like that. So I encourage you to take a look at that tool. And then we've also just recently updated our website. So I encourage you to look at that. So you see the URLs that are at the bottom, but I'll post all of these in the chat. And then finally, I just wanted to say that we are looking ahead to what will happen to our program when we see the end of the funding. The Ventura River Watershed Council is funded independently of the regional program, and some of you are participants in funding that. So that will obviously keep going. That won't be affected by the regional program, any changes that we have to that. But we have an MOU currently among all funding parties for Watersheds Coalition that funds the work that I do. And that MOU expires next October. And so we need to look to see how stakeholders want to continue to stay engaged on the regional level. We're going to be conducting a survey of the membership to get your feedback on what kinds of things you'd like to see from the program, especially since it will no longer be the primary vehicle for receiving funding, access to state funding or the IRWM funding. So we'll be focusing our meeting in January on that and where we are going and how what type of forum and ongoing stakeholder engagement we would like to have in the county, and interaction with the watershed groups and where we might get funding from. So that's kind of where we're going in 2023. We'll have to make some decisions. Those of you that know Sue Hughes, she has been the chair of WCVC for many years. Those of you that are really new, WCVC started in 2006, but Sue will be retiring and stepping down in January. So we also have leadership and governance questions to resolve upon her departure. So that concludes my comments. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah,
It's always great to hear about the funding updates and WCVC updates that you have. And I encourage anyone to go to those Water Talks events. They're really, really valuable.
Yeah, and we do have a Water Talks committee. And if you're interested, if you're not already on the list, let me know and I can add you to the list. We've been meeting pretty regularly, and we'll continue to do so, even beyond the grant. So,
okay.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So next up, if there's no questions for Lynn, we have a National Weather Service update for the season from David.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the invite, first of all, and always good to be able to share our information from the Weather Service. I got the invite from Andy. Andy was in one of my fire classes that I taught for S290 fire classes. But for those who may not know about our agency, the Weather Service, actually we cover 4 counties. We cover LA, Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo County. In addition to like the public forecast, I think you're all familiar with that you get on your phone or get on the newscast. We also do fire weather forecasting, marine forecasting, aviation for all the various airports in the region, as well as public safety. So every watch warning advisory that you see that alerts on your phone or on your TV, that also originates from a Weather Service office like ours. So we're one of 6 offices in California, and there's 122 offices nationwide. So that's kind of the overall setup of our agency. So today, Andy had asked me to kind of give an overview of the winter outlook and just give you a little flavor of some of the fire weather services that we provide for our region. And hopefully this could be some benefit for your group here. So I'll go ahead and share the screen. Let's see here. Okay, so I put together a PowerPoint briefing here. And at the end, we'll have time for a few questions as well. So again, my name is Dave Gomberg. I'm the Fire Weather Program Manager at the Oxnard Weather Service Office. And today we were just gonna go ahead and put it in present mode here. So we're gonna look at just kind of an overview of how we've got here in terms of precipitation and fuels update, as well as how that it could play out in terms of our seasonal outlook, kind of an overview of our fire weather products and services, and quickly how to get information from our website. So here are some of the key players and key resources I kind of summarized on one slide. So I kind of oversee the fire weather program at the office. I left my email and phone number. So in case anybody has any future questions, they can reach out to me on that. For some of you who may have known in our office, our manager was Mark Jackson for many years. He just recently retired. So our new manager will be coming on board actually next week, Ariel Cohen. Warning coordination meteorologist, some of you may have interacted with Eric Bolt in the past. He's the warning coordination meteorologist. Kind of think of him as like the PIO of the agency. We also have what's called an incident meteorologist, someone that is actually deployed out on site during major fires, and he's specially trained, and his name is Rich Thompson. And then a website here, kind of if you haven't been on our website before, I encourage you to check it out. weather.gov/Los Angeles. And then here are a few different key resources that we're going to highlight today that might be of some benefit for your agency, and how to get weather information. So key points that I wanted to kind of draw to your attention here is when we talk about winter outlook, one of the main themes that we've been talking about is La Nina. So you've probably heard the term El Nino, La Nina, and we're going to go over quickly what that is and why that's important for our kind of long-term outlook. Of course, we have the underlying theme of a severe to exceptional drought that's persisted over California for several years now. Last year was actually a below normal water year in terms of precipitation. And in fact, if you go back the last 23 years, 15 out of those last 23 have been below normal. However, even though we may be advertising, below normal rainfall year, always important to remember that on any given year, even during a La Nina, you can get impactful, very powerful winter storms that, so we don't want to let our guard down in terms of, Southern California, it's kind of like a feast or famine. We can get long periods of dry, but when we do get rain, it can come pretty intense. And that's why we sometimes have these flash flooding and debris flow concerns for our burn scars. So this was a map that kind of shows over time. Let me see if I can move this out of the way here. So you can see down on the right is kind of the current past rain season, 2021, 2022. And the brownish colors show pretty much the years of below normal rainfall, while the green areas show the above normal rainfall. So you can see, again, we've been really dominated in the last couple of decades by more years of below normal rainfall. Okay, so over here is just I want to give you a snapshot of where we sit in terms of our rainfall for the season. This is from Ventura County Flood Control Agency, and they have a great rain gauge network out there. And you can see, despite a couple of winter systems or early season systems that we've had, a lot of areas are still struggling to even reach 2 inches of rain for the season. In fact, a few areas even below 1 inch of rain. So that has an impact on our fuel and fire weather situation. We're hopeful we'll get a little bit more rain here the next few days to add on to this. But as of right now, we still have some fire weather concerns because of the lack of seasonal rainfall in Ventura County. So kind of giving you a snapshot of the drought situation. On the right is what was kind of where we were last year. While we have had some improvement across the state, you can still see a large part of our 4-county area is in that extreme to even exceptional drought category. So we're still in a pretty serious situation there. And then as far as how it's reflected on the fuels, okay, this is a chart of the live fuel moisture, and thanks to Ventura County Fire, they do a fantastic job of giving these samples out there that are very useful for our office when we're trying to get situational awareness on our fuel situation. And for those who may not have seen this chart before, what they've done here is they sampled various points within the county. You can see the locations down below, 5 locations representing each of these colors. And basically, the higher the number of the live fuel moisture, the more green or more moisture there is in the plant life. And you can see, as you would typically go in the late winter, early spring, that's typically when you get the highest amount of moisture in the vegetation. And then that steadily decreases as you go into the summer, and especially usually bottoms out in the fall months here. So you can still see that we're at this critical 60% live fuel moisture level. And pretty much all sites are between 60 and 70%. So while they are starting to creep up a little bit in response to the recent rain, they still aren't high enough to be saying that we have no concern. So that's something we'll be watching. And we get these samples every 2 weeks, and we'll kind of see how the progress of the live fuel moisture. So here's a map just showing you kind of what we call sea surface temperatures, and more specifically, the sea surface temperature anomaly, meaning how does it compare to normal for a given time of year. So this was a snapshot from this week. And here we are in North America here, South America down here in my arrow. And then the more important region that we're looking at when we talk about El Nino and La Nina is near the equator here. Okay, what are the ocean temperatures doing in this region? And that helps drive some of the major weather patterns that can affect us here in North America. And so the blue colors actually represent below normal sea surface temperature. And the darker the blue, that's the more significant cooling of the ocean temperature. So in an El Nino, you would actually have just the opposite, where you'd have severe warming of the equatorial Pacific. In this case, La Nina, you're in these cooler than normal colors. So what that does, kind of the schematic kind of shows you how it can alter the kind of the weather patterns. And basically what drives our weather systems is the jet stream. Okay, if the jet stream is pointed toward California, that will bring more rain into the region during the rain season. And our rain season is typically December through March. So we're kind of coming right into that window of the greatest rainfall threat. But what happens during a La Nina is the jet stream kind of focuses the energy more often than not toward the Pacific Northwest. So they have a tendency, on average, to get higher than normal rainfall in the Pacific Northwest, whereas the Southwest United States is typically drier and warmer. So this map here, oops, let me go back here. This shows kind of where we were in the last couple of seasons here with La Nina. And again, these thresholds right here, the dotted blue line is what we call the La Nina threshold, meaning that if the average sea surface temperature for that key region, the Nino 3.4, which is that equatorial Pacific region, if that's a -0.5 degree, that's all you need below normal, that's what constitutes a weak El Nino. And on the flip side, if it's positive 0.5, that's what triggers a weak El Nino. Okay, so you can see in the last couple winter seasons, we've actually been below this -0.5. So therefore, we've been categorized in the La Nina region. And even going into this season, that trend has continued. And so the question is, how often does this really occur? And the answer is it's pretty rare to get 3 seasons in a row of a La Nina. And that's why the headline here, going for a triple dip in terms of La Nina. It's really hard to see in this image here, but these other gray lines are other seasons where we had La Nina, in fact, 2 La Ninas, and it's basically showing that most of the graphs are showing by the 3rd season, you actually trend either toward neutral or sometimes even into the positive El Nino category. So it's pretty unusual to get 3 seasons in a row climatologically. So these are what come out of our Climate Prediction Center. So you can think of the Weather Service being kind of the short-term weather focus, whereas Climate Prediction Center is looking more at the long-range projections. And these are one of the charts that they put out that just kind of shows what their forecast models are showing in terms of sea surface temperature anomaly. So again, remember, if we're at -0.5, that's the kind of the leading point for a La Nina. That's why I have the arrow here showing that the cooler this arrow goes down in terms of temperatures, that's colder. And then going on the flip side, if these numbers are higher, that means the equatorial Pacific is warmer than normal. So basically what it's showing here is in November when the model ran, you can see we were still sitting in that El Nino region. And what it's trying to project is an overall trend that most of the model solutions are trending upward in terms of sea surface temperature. But if you still look at this winter, being the December, January, February timeframe, the majority of the solutions are still projecting well into the La Nina category. And that continues really for the next few months after that. But then there comes a certain point as we head perhaps toward spring or even more so in the summer months, where a majority of those models start trending the sea surface temperature back toward neutral. So that should be the end of that La Nina cycle when that occurs. Okay, but for this season anyway, we're still at least going to be very likely, as it says up here, 76% chance of La Nina during the Northern Hemisphere winter months, December through February, with a 57% chance of it lingering in through April. Okay, so then this is the distribution of rainfall and why it's so important to kind of figure out whether we're going to be in La Nina, more of a neutral, or El Nino. And what this is showing you in terms of precipitation is that on average, okay, again, everything in climatology is about averages, projections, doesn't mean it's going to be absolute guarantee of below normal, but you can see that the majority, if you were to look in this rectangular box, that's where the majority of seasons would concentrate rainfall. So generally somewhere maybe between 5 and 8 inches during the months of January, February, March, okay, which again is kind of the focus of our heaviest rainfall period. Whereas El Nino, you can see it definitely skews greater precipitation. In some cases, the upper end of the spectrum, which is this top dashed line here, can be quite significant. Whereas you can see in the La Nina that top projection just sits a little bit over 10 inches. Okay, neutral kind of in between, where you could have quite a bit more variation in terms of response than a La Nina. Okay, so again, even though this could be below normal statistically, doesn't mean you can't get an outlier, and certainly doesn't mean you can't get a significant storm or two during a La Nina that could bring impactful rainfall. So then looking at the outlook periods, again, this is Climate Prediction Center looking at the long-term projections, and we're looking specifically at that January, February, March timeframe. So what the left graph is showing you is that, again, this fits the typical La Nina signature, where you would expect cooler than normal temperatures in the Pacific Northwest and warmer than normal temperatures in the Southwest United States. And more importantly, the precipitation, again, focuses a higher probability of above normal rainfall over the Pacific Northwest and a higher probability of below normal rainfall in Southern California. So then how does this translate into large fire potential? So the Predictive Services in Riverside puts together these charts. In fact, they should have a new one out sometime today, but this was a snapshot from the one they did last month. And basically in the next several months, all the way through February, they're calling for near normal large fire potential. Large fire is basically defined for any significant fire, 200 acres or greater typically. And so they're basically saying that they're not really expecting any areas to receive above normal threat, which is good news. So some of their key takeaways is near normal large fire potential, precipitation likely below normal, temperatures likely remaining above normal, and amount of Santa Ana winds likely to be near or below normal. Okay. All right, so then just a little bit of an overview of our fire weather services that we provide, in case you're not familiar. The main thing here is that the kind of products and services that we provide, our main goal is highlighted here in red, basically to enable fire agencies to plan resource levels and help pre-position equipment and personnel for rapid initial attack. Okay, so in our world, we can have a red flag situation, and if we don't have any large fires, that's actually good news. That means we've done the preparatory work to help put the resources in place to help give the agencies information so that they can quickly respond to any new fire ignition. Okay, so we can do that in various ways. It can be through different products that we issue, different types of coordination that we do, and also on-site meteorologists that I talked about. The incident meteorologists can be right there on site for an extended period, sometimes upwards of 2 weeks during a major event. And now we're also making a big push at the agency to get other meteorologists to provide on-site support at more of a shorter duration and more narrower scope than a full-fledged IMET, but still can be benefit to have somebody out there on location. So here is something that may be not realized, is that there's a lot of communication that goes on behind the scenes with our fire partners. And that can be in the form of special conference calls. We hold these 1 o'clock calls. They're event driven, so they're not an everyday thing, but just when needed, we'll get everybody together from all the various fire agencies in Southern California, as well as the emergency managers for each county. And we have basically a 10 to 15 minute powwow, kind of giving an overview of the weather, where our major concerns are, and more importantly, give the fire agencies a chance to interact and give their take on fuels and fire behavior, and also have them have an opportunity to ask questions. So again, it's all about decision support, providing the information in a way that they can receive it and then take and make good decisions from. Okay, so besides conference calls, we also occasionally do webinars. We send out a lot of email briefings. Sometimes it's a matter of just picking up the phone and talking directly to the key player. That could be for Ventura County Fire, that could be the operations chief, or perhaps the fuel moisture expert of the county, or what we call a fire behavior analyst. And then lastly, the on-site support that I mentioned earlier. So these are just a summary of our basic products that we issue. The main foundational product is called a fire weather planning forecast. Those are issued twice per day right now during high season. And that's just basically a forecast for each of the different zones within the county. And then you may be familiar with the RAWS network, which are remote automated weather stations that collect weather data on an hourly basis for different parts of the region. The fire agencies own these. But what we do is almost think of it like a spot forecast for those RAWS locations. And then based on those forecasts, that helps generate different indices, specifically burn index, that helps them plan for staffing levels. Okay, so one of their ways that they have to try to figure is how to staff and how much resources, and we can generate these forecasts in advance to help them better prepare for where the critical areas of the county may be. And then once we have an incident, we're going to talk about spot weather forecasts here shortly and the various types. And then, of course, when we're in a more severe fire weather situation, we also issue red flag warnings and fire weather watches. And finally, on-site support. Again, Rich Thompson in our office provides the incident meteorology support. And that can be more than just fires. Imagine if we had a big flooding or debris flow concern, we could actually deploy Rich as a full IMET, or we could have other meteorologists at our office available for on-site deployment, perhaps even like an EOC. So last year, or actually earlier this year, I should say, we actually implemented some new zones within the county. So before, it was really simple. We just had one coastal zone, we had 2 valley zones and a mountain zone. That's the way it had been for many years. And we decided, we kind of looked at things a little more closely. Now that we have a lot more data out there, we realize that there's even more microclimates that suggest the need for more localization of these fire weather zones. And they're not only for the daily forecast product, but even in terms of red flag warning. You don't want to overwarn an area where it's not receiving the same conditions. So for example, during a Santa Ana wind, we know that the eastern part of the county, say Piru Fillmore or Simi Valley out toward Moore Park, it's going to get the brunt of the Santa Ana winds. But perhaps over here in Ojai and Casitas, they're really not going to see nearly the impact during the Santa Ana wind event. So as a result, we want to separate areas out a little bit more detail to get a better daily forecast, and also, again, not to overwarn areas that don't need to be. Okay, so the main changes: add Ojai zone, add a Casitas zone, and split the coastal zone here between an immediate coast and more interior coastal zone. Okay, so that brings us to fire weather watches and red flag warnings. And really the upshot is 2 things. You're basically thinking of it as anything that could be a threat to life and property. And besides just the weather, we also want to look at fuels. Okay, and again, the fire agencies are the experts on fuels, and we rely heavily on their input for that part of it. But from a weather perspective, we want to try to think about what are the weather conditions that would dictate a watch and a warning. Okay, sometimes people think they're 2 different criteria. They're actually the same criteria. It's really about confidence and lead time. So with a watch, we want to think of that as like a 50% chance that you're going to hit red flag conditions. And we typically, even though it says 18 to 96, more often than not, we're really shooting for about a 48 to 72 hour lead time. We want to give ample opportunity for the fire agencies to prepare for a major event. And then when we get closer to the event and we have higher confidence that it's going to occur, we would upgrade that to a red flag warning. And typically, I would say 24 hours is oftentimes the goal that we're shooting for, at least 24 hours of lead time for a red flag warning. So what are the criteria? Okay, again, watch and warning, same criteria. It's just about a matter of confidence and lead time. And as far as the wind aspect, let me move this here. So basically you have sustained wind 25 miles an hour or greater, or gust to 35 miles an hour. And that has to overlap with an RH of 15%. Okay, and the two of those factors have to have a duration of 6 hours or more. So that's really important. They know that they can handle a short burst of weather, bad weather conditions, but when it becomes more of a prolonged duration, that's when the concern is greater. So you need that 6 hour criteria for both number 1 and number 2. And number 2 criteria basically says, if your relative humidity goes down to 10% or less, now you only need a sustained wind of 15 miles an hour or gust to 25 miles an hour. And then third, occasionally we get a dry lightning event that could spawn new fire emissions. And again, that would have to be with dry fuels. And then occasionally you'll have a situation where you may not hit these first 2 thresholds, but you will have what we call forecaster discretion. An example, let's say you expect a Santa Ana wind, very powerful wind event, 60, 70 mile an hour wind gust that far exceeds this threshold, but maybe the humidity only goes down to 20% and your fuels are very dry. You wouldn't want to ignore that event because the wind is always the key factor. And just because you're not quite at the humidity threshold, that may be a reason to consider forecaster discretion. We would coordinate that with the fire agency. We spread this information a lot on social media, so you'll see this on our website. And then spot forecasts, as I mentioned, spots are becoming more and more useful for not just wildfires. We have a lot for prescribed burns, even hazmat, search and rescue events, large event planning. Suppose a fire agency is involved in developing an incident action plan, say for a major sporting event or concert or funeral, parade, whatever it may be, they can put in a request for that as well. And also very important just to include a contact number and any observations that are on site that give us kind of feedback of how well our spots are doing. Okay, so that's those are the different reasons you can do a spot weather forecast, typically reserved for fire agencies and emergency management community. Okay, and then finally, how to get NWS information. So on our website, as I showed you on that title slide, you can get a lot of information on there, but I'm going to draw your attention to the icons at the bottom of our front page. And there's 3 main icons. There's the fast page, mobile device, and fire weather icon. And if you were to go to the fire weather section, this is the first map that would show up. And basically down below is a map of our county warning area of the different zones that I mentioned earlier. But what I really want to draw your attention to is where you can get the main products that I've been describing. Spot weather forecast go first, right here in this top left box. The general fire weather forecast, red flag warning product, and trend forecasts all under forecast. And then lastly, we're going to talk about a couple of key tools. Fire weather snooper and fire one page. If you haven't seen, especially the fire weather snooper, I definitely encourage you. This is a great way to monitor real-time data, especially during red flag events. And finally, we have a page that's accessible for a mobile page as well, to basically get the same resources on your cell phone. Okay, so for fire weather snooper, if you haven't seen this before, the idea behind it was let's create a product that when we're in red flag conditions, we always had 2 main questions or 2 main agencies that we're always asking is like the media and the fire agencies want to know, okay, you've issued a red flag warning, how many stations are actually in red flag and for how long? So that's what the red colors actually show you in this example, is that these are the stations that are actually hitting red flag threshold, and the yellow tells you the number or basically the stations that are approaching red flag. So the more serious one is the red, that you're actually hitting red flag. And that's what the first number tells you, is the number of hours or duration. So for example, Wiley Ridge has 11 hours where it's actually hit red flag. And if you remember, what was the definition of a red flag duration? It was 6 hours or greater. So when I go back and verify what stations are hitting red flag conditions, I can use this as a tool to tell me, okay, these are the sites that have hit 6 hours or more, and would help verify a red flag warning. Okay, and then a couple other features here. You can sort by any one of these elements, so you can click on it. So I could click on wind and would sort the highest wind, or I could click on RH and give me the lowest humidity. And also here, you can click on these three right buttons here, and you can get things like a map format. You can get archive data for past events. And again, the red shades indicate red flag conditions, and yellow means you're approaching red flag. Or you can actually mouse down over a particular site, and it'll give you a readout of the last 24 hours. Okay, so you can see clearly in this example, all of the red flag hours have been consecutive. And then again, if you click the right bars and you see a display map option right here pops up, and then you can see it in a more graphical format, and that really draws your attention to where the critical area is. This is typical Santa Ana, where you get Western Los Angeles County and Eastern Ventura County, right over here being the areas of concern. And also of note is the larger the circle, that basically means the higher the wind speed. So just another way to kind of draw your attention to where the higher wind speed are occurring. Okay, so as I mentioned, if we have time for a few questions here, but if you have any future questions, you can reach out to me. This is a general office number that goes out into operations. We don't really have dedicated lines per se, but you can just ask for me if I'm there on site, or just drop me an email if you have any follow-up questions. And right here, again, if you haven't been on our website, weather.gov/Los Angeles, we're very active on Twitter as well. Not so much, a little bit on Facebook and a little bit on YouTube and a little bit on Instagram, but really for the most part, we shoot out a lot of updates through Twitter. All right, and so I'll open it up for any questions and comments.
Thank you, David. That was super interesting to know the drivers of La Nina and what's to come this weather season. And also, yeah, I've always wondered what constitutes a red flag warning. And so, yeah, that was really interesting to see.
Good.
I encourage anyone to go on the website and click on all the tools.
Yeah, there's a lot of information on there. So yeah, if anybody has any question or I can't find something, just drop me an email and I'd be glad to walk you through that.
Awesome. Well, if there's no questions for David, as you said, feel free to shoot him an email. And if not, we will move on. Next, we have Chris Staunch from the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative. He's going to give an update on the Ojai project.
Thank you, Desiree. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Let me share the screen. Oh, you have to drop the other screen there, David.
Oh, okay. Let's see. All right, is that better now?
That's better. Let's see if I can't do it here. Everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, good morning, everybody. As the agenda indicates, I'm going to give an update on project with the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, but I'm also going to go a little bit beyond that scope and describe some other another project related, because they're all related and they all complement one another. So for those who aren't familiar with the Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council, we've been around since 2000. We've managed a wide variety of federal grants and other private and to lesser extent state grants. We are currently managing both up to close to 2 million in projects now, going into 2023 and ending in early 2024. That's a combination of the CAL FIRE grant with the collaborative and also federal funding and some private funding as well, and some directly from the city of Ventura and from Ventura County Fire Protection District. In the course of these last 22 years, we have built an extensive network of partners and that we work with. And as you will see in these projects, they are involved in many ways in what we're doing. We won't really talk much. We all know that Ojai Valley and the surrounding area is a very high fire hazard. I think the one statistic that I point to frequently is Headwaters Economics did a report back, I think about a year ago, and Ojai Valley came out in the top 1% of the nation for wildfire risk and the top 3% in California. So we are definitely, no pun intended, a hotspot. Pretty much everything that makes a community vulnerable to wildfire risk, we have here in our area. I did not put together last night because I didn't have the current map at my house, our project area. So I'll use this map that's sitting here right now to show what our basic planning area is. And basically if you can see my cursor, it travels around, it encompasses the upper watershed regions, goes over down to 150, just above Santa Paula, then wraps around the areas around Canada Larga and back around the watershed, and extends all the way down to Foster Park and Casitas Springs, and includes Rose Valley as well. For a number of reasons, particularly evacuation considerations, but also just education and preparedness in those areas. It covers an area about 350 square miles, and as you will see, some of our projects extend outside that area and even countywide. Obviously, we well talked about anything more than we prepare to be in a new fire regime. So our season pretty much extends year round. And while we in this area here have had a somewhat of a area of opportunity, given the reduced fuel loads following the Thomas fire, and that regrowth has been strong despite the drought, but not as strong as it would be. But over time, that window is closing, so we need this time to be ready. So what had happened back after the Thomas fire is that we were approached by a number of stakeholders and internal to the organization that we wanted to really build community level capacity here in Ojai, as what we had done, which was all good and has served the valley well in the past, was not enough in the face of an event like the Thomas fire. So we put together a planning document internally in 2019, and we're moving toward a holistic vision of community cohesion and resiliency. We're basing our risk mitigation strategy on a number of assumptions. One, of course, is that wildfire is necessary and inevitable. But here's the key point, that in building community capacity and what drives the kinds of projects we're doing now. And that is that we have thousands of fires in California, but only a very small percentage of those, less than 5%, are deemed uncontrollable. And that very small percentage does 95% of the damage or more. And in that time, like a fast moving event like the Thomas fire, then you have a time when, by the very nature of this, and I'll describe in a second what a catastrophic fire is, you need a heightened community capacity beyond what public agencies can give. So when we talk about a catastrophic fire, we're talking about obviously extensive property damage and possible loss of life, the isolation of areas like Ojai that have limited evacuation routes, obviously a massive disruption of our critical infrastructure, including our transportation network, but also cell phones and power. We have a very high potential for a catastrophic grid failure here in Ojai. And by the very nature of a catastrophic fire, i.e. uncontrollable, it will overwhelm the response capacities of public safety resources, and then has a long-term economic impact. Hence the resiliency component of this as to how do we more quickly recover from such an event. We did a recent showing here in Ojai of the film Rebuilding Paradise, and it was hosted by the director, Ron Howard. And a very interesting comment was made by one of the firefighters up there in Paradise, and was saying, and there's a town that was actually very well prepared. The Butte Fire Safe Council was a very good fire safe council, had done a lot of work, as had, of course, county, their fire and CAL FIRE, everybody else. But what the gentleman said is we could have had 1,000 engines on that ridge and it wouldn't have made any difference. So we had the potential for such a catastrophic event here in Ojai, and that's what we keep our eye on. And our goals for risk mitigation, again, was very much we're focused as a community-based organization on building community capacity, so a bottom-up effort. Ultimately, to build a culture of resiliency and become a truly fire-adapted community in a fire-dependent ecosystem. To do that, we're going to need a little bit at the community level, sort of a shift in our perspective, a cultural shift, which is going to take time, and it's going to be an organic process and one that just will evolve and unfold as we make these efforts. But we have focused most of our attention as a society on the command and control of fires. So lots of suppression and looking at the wildland and what we're going to do there. And while I can understand that from the perspective of the agencies, for communities, we have to move toward a different viewpoint, and that's one of adaptation to this inevitability and necessity of these wildfires. So we're looking at proper adaptive responses for something we can't control, and then looking outward from our communities and building reliance. In an event like a Thomas Fire, the public agencies, Ventura County, for example, will say that, you know, in such an event, the community is going to be on its own for a period of time, probably a minimum of 6 hours, could be a lot more than that. So we have to build this kind of culture that we we can turn to one another. And as these projects unfold, and particularly our community wildfire protection plan, we'll be exploring how that can happen and working closely with members of the community to do so. So to realize this new vision, this new initiative that we had, we first did a roadmap, an internal planning document. We identified project areas for focus and then design and implement those priority projects as we move along. We, through a variety of inputs, including an online survey, workshops, meetings, working group, etc., we developed a roadmap of general concerns that we have. You can see those there. And that gave rise shortly after the Thomas Fire. That gave us our first line of priority projects. We called them conceptual projects during the planning phase. And then we're going to go through what is happening with those right now. To do so, of course, we have ongoing effective working partnerships. And one of those, of course, is we formed along with Ventura County RCD, Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, and Bell Canyon Fire Safe Council, and the private industry contractor Jensen Hughes. We formed the Ventura Wildfire Collaborative. And of course, we're talking about mostly what's going on within those collaborative projects now. And I encourage you to visit the website. There's a calendar there of these events. And we have an ongoing speaker series, town hall series that has been started. Next one's in Simi Valley, I believe, on December 15th. So just keep track of what we're doing there. An example of this is we launched the regional town hall meetings. This is under the CAL FIRE grant from 2021. We met with the cities of Ventura County and had a meeting and got their concerns about what they'd want to hear or be addressed in these regional meetings, and at the same time also what's the best timing for them. That was a very successful engagement. So in progress right now, and we had thought we would start these earlier this year, but we didn't. Delays beyond our control. But as presented before, we've had our community supported grazing program. And then I'm going to be talking about these other ones that we're going right now. And we're also looking at future projects, which will be the subject of our grant work this coming year. So on the collaborative projects, there are 6 of them under the 2021 CAL FIRE grant. And we are the lead on 2 of those, the fine scale risk mapping and a wildfire vulnerability and evacuation assessment. And we're jointly working on the countywide home hardening, which is being managed by Ventura Regional, the Ventura County-wide CWPP update, which this Fire Safe Council did in 2010. And Ventura Regional again is managing that. And then we have the outreach and education campaign being managed by the RCD. And then next October, we're having a major 3-day wildfire summit. You'll be hearing more about that, managed by the RCD, but has a very extensive advisory committee. That's going to be a big concern and be held at the Reagan Library. So one of the two projects we're managing for the collaborative on the CAL FIRE grant is the fine scale risk mapping, which is just doing our hazard mapping at a much greater granularity than that can be provided by the CAL FIRE maps. And so that'll be used in our local planning. The core working group on this and the other projects is, of course, our Fire Safe Council, Ventura County Fire, and Jensen Hughes, and evacuation. We're also bringing in a transportation modeling contractor. What's going to be coming out of this for the public, in addition to local planning, is a public online digital dashboard that this database can be accessed and viewed and continue education and outreach to the community through that. A subset of this is the EmberCast modeling and mapping. This is actually being done from a match funding from Ventura County Fire Protection District. This is countywide, not just for our planning area. And basically, we're looking at doing 3 levels of modeling for this and coming out with maps of landing distribution that can be added to the fine scale risk mapping for this area. I will also note that the fine scale risk mapping in the next project we have, the wildfire vulnerability and evacuation assessment, in addition to being projects in their own right for our planning area, we're also designed as being a pilot for countywide projects, which is what has happened with the EmberCast. And as I will describe shortly, as you can see below, that's happened again with the State Coastal Conservancy grant that the collaborative received this year for $1.2 million. And so we'll be taking aspects of this vulnerability study and extending it countywide to help county planning in the update of the safety element of the 2040 Ventura County plan. Obviously, we're looking at a vulnerability of critical infrastructure, both to fire and to subsequent debris flows, and really taking a hard look in our area of evacuation and evacuation options, and look at what we can do for improvements, looking at the areas of potential temporary refuge for large animal evacuations, and those things that really concern us here in the Ojai Valley area. And we're working again on a large technical advisory group for this and the fine scale risk mapping, which includes Ventura County Fire, RCD, Ventura County Transportation Commission, Ventura County OES, City of Ojai, County of Ventura, and others, in addition to steering groups and in direct and individual consultations like with the Forest Service. We, under the CAL FIRE grant, the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council is managing a countywide home hardening resilience program. Part of that is to hire full-time liaisons stretching into 2024. One is in the Ventura River Watershed, and part of the week we are hosting that liaison here in Ojai at our office. And they're doing home assessments, training of the trainers, and data collection and doing it in a standardized method. We'll be giving, like I said, support to that, and that support's being made possible for us by a small grant from the City of Ojai to cover our staff time in assisting and in helping to focus the liaisons' efforts here in the Ojai Valley area. And then this is sort of a work in progress. We're taking a look at trying to develop a risk scoring tool in conjunction with the insurance industry and others So we're looking at a technical advisory group that can sit at the table. As you may be aware, let me check my time. As you may be aware, there's some new insurance regulations coming down in January that requires insurers in California to take into account wildfire risk mitigation efforts down to the parcel level and in their rating plans. Well, what people who work in this area realize is that the industry lacks data and lacks a framework and kind of lacks the risk scoring ability that they have confidence in to properly model their risk premiums. So we're hoping to contribute to that through this effort. And as this becomes better designed and implemented with Jensen Hughes and others, we'll update people on that. So we're looking at a decision-making tool. We're going to be doing some post-fire forensic inspections, like on the Londo area in Ventura, down in Malibu in the Woolsey fire, smaller areas like my own street, North Fork Springs Road, and looking at what was there and what happened after the fire, and try to start to put some priority and some scoring on those risks that were present and any mitigation efforts that were taken, and looking at the big picture of the whole thing that that insurance companies currently don't have the data for. So more than just location, but slope, aspect, structure, separation, distances, ingress, egress considerations, all that. So we're hoping to have that build over the year and hoping to pull in other institutions like UCSB and others into this. So the key outcomes here would be a wildfire risk prioritization tool and working with insurance carriers to get buy-in and support in developing that scoring criteria. And also looking at how to do a better data management of all of this so that it is consistent across Ventura County, how this data is done, is collected and managed and coded, and also eventually coordinate with on a more regional basis as well. Like I said, we did receive the collaborative did receive a grant from the State Coastal Conservancy, and one aspect of that was to, which I just described, is to look at critical infrastructure for county planning to update the safety element, and that project will be beginning in late 2023. Again, we're kind of putting off starting that because we will be utilizing the foundation built by the other projects of the fine-scale risk mapping and the vulnerability assessment that allows us to perform this on a more cost-effective basis. Now, not under the collaborative, but certainly related to all of this, is we have also launched a Ojai Valley Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Of course, all the work I just described will go into this. Same core working group. Steering groups are being formed to represent various aspects of our community, including agencies, nonprofits, hospitality here in Ojai, education, etc. This is a community-driven plan. We'll have considerable outreach on this, beginning with our community workshops, which will begin in early next year, either in January or very early February. We'll have a dedicated web portal for this, and again, reissuing our online survey to gain more information from the community. We're focusing this, really making an effort to put the community back in community wildfire protection plans. There's a trend in these things, for those who are not familiar, CWPP is done under the criteria of the Healthy Forest Restoration Act, I believe, of 2001. So they've been around for a while, and these frameworks are pretty well developed. But for areas that are our size and bigger, the trend has been for these CWPs to be very agency driven, which is nothing wrong with that, except for the fact it doesn't do much to build community capacity. And when you come down to the action plan, which is the actionable product of a CWPP for the next 5 to 10 years, usually it comes down to a whole line of what the agencies are going to do and not what the community is going to do for itself to build that capacity. We're hoping to change that with this plan, and with the amount of effort going into this and the data going into it and already substantial partnerships, we are hoping and expecting this to be a particularly robust CWPP. It also allows us to incorporate what we've been doing all along, and that is a very holistic approach to this. So we take into account economic effects and education and demographics and behavior and critical infrastructure and how it all works together. Our prescribed grazing program is an example of a holistic approach to fuel reduction and scale. So the highlights of it, obviously, we'll have the traditional elements of a CWPP, which is a hazard analysis, fuel treatment programs, and an action plan. And of course, but we'll have a greater degree of community involvement, we're hoping. And now that will become a robust project plan stretching for the next 10 years. That will be supported by, well, here's some of the inputs. We'll also be having webinars in addition to our workshops. 4 of those are in person, 2 will be virtual. We'll also record them, make them available online. We're also doing a series of webinars on this building community capacity. So those are work in progress. And then we'll be having regular publications in the Ojai Valley News and other places, of course, news on our web portal. So, and the web portal should be up and running by January 1st. So just a little update on our community supported grazing program, which I presented a number of times here. Let me check my time, I'm getting short. This year was a grazing planning summit. We pulled in people from all over the state. It was a very successful day. And if anybody's interested in the outcomes of that, which we have a detailed compilation of what went on in that planning summit, please get a hold of me and I can provide that to you. It was about, I don't know, I believe we had about 40 people. And it was, basically it was people from all walks of life in the grazing activities in the state, including UC Extension, UCANR, the fire department, and others were there, including Santa Barbara County, because we have grazing programs that are closely aligned. And we came away with key takeaways, though not frankly unexpected, but that the grazing can be an effective, impactful tool that at the same time reduces fuel loads, but also improves ecological health. And that will continue to be expanded this year. We are looking at a second summit sometime next year, pending this first round of work in the coming year, which is to construct a playbook based upon what we've learned so far in our program, but then to further build these partnerships So what's next? After we finish these foundational projects, the ones I described with the mapping and everything, we're looking at with the CWPP coming out with a long-term project plan. The Coastal Conservancy and its grant to the collaborative also included funding for a 10-year project plan. So we'll be augmenting that. That's countywide, but obviously our work here will inform that plan. And that's an exciting development. That was actually on the initiative of the Coastal Conservancy for the Wildfire Collaborative. And then we are looking at the grazing program and others to really start to build our community supported aspect of this. So that's something that this Fire Safe Council is not really have done in the past. So that's a new thing for us, and looking at a variety of long-term baseline funding options that are important to our continued work. And of course, all the roadmap and the CWP are all organic, non-linear, iterative processes, which will continue to evolve and remain, a living, working document. So that's our program for the time being. I believe I'm out of time. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. I don't have a form for my contact information. I'll put it in the chat if anybody is interested in getting a hold of me. And with that, I thank everybody. For any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. That was super informative. I love hearing about the foundational projects and what's to come and the funding sources of it all. Super informative.
Thank
So
you.
if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the question and answer, the Q&A at the bottom, left hand on your screen, or raise your hand and ask them. And Chris, if you could just drop your email or however you would like to be reached into the chat, that would be great for people. So if there's no questions for Chris, without further ado, we'll head on to our next presenter. It'll be Celine Booney with the County Fire Activities in Ojai Valley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Celine Booney. I'm the pre-fire specialist with the Ventura County Fire Department. And a big part of my job is beyond the 100 feet or the defensible space. And so I deal with fuel reduction projects or fuel modification projects all over Ventura County. Another part of my job is I liaison with the nonprofits like the RCD and the Fire Safe Councils and others. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen and I'm going to take you on a tour. Everybody see my screen?
Sorry, not yet.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Now?
No.
Oh no. Let's see. I think I'm the one person that didn't try this beforehand.
Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to pop up.
Okay. Still no?
No. Are you on double monitors?
No.
Could be that.
Let's try this. How's that?
There we go.
Okay, I figured it out. All right, so here is obviously a map of Ojai Valley. And I'm going to start this first project that we work on is in Upper Ojai off of Cesar Road. This is Cesar Road right here. Hopefully this will buffer a little bit better so you can see. I have to pull out a little bit. Darn. Well, you can see this is the summit. If you're familiar with this area, Upper Ojai Valley, this is the Summit restaurant right here. So just over this way, there's the school over here. This is Cesar Road that goes up and over towards Nordoff Peak. And this right here is one of our grazing projects that we do. And this is a maintenance project that the Ventura County Fire Department has been doing every spring for about 9 years now. And this is a great project. The community here really likes to see the goats out, and they're a lot quieter than chainsaws and weed whips, and they're fun to watch. So this is called a community buffer is what it is. And it's kind of a funky shape, but that's just because we have some, a little bit more of a riparian area we're getting out of here, and then also due to just landowner agreements. This isn't buffering well. This worked a lot better earlier, but I will continue on. And I'll just stay out a little bit. The next project, this is a current project we're working on right now. We have crews up there right now. This is the Ojai Community CDZ or Community Defense Zone. And this project is along this, people call it Fuel Break Road. So this is Gridley over here, Foothill over here, Quail Run Ranch in this area. So this is a project with the Los Padres National Forest. And this is kind of a maintenance project because we've worked on it with the Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council before and the Forest Service before in years past. And obviously the Thomas Fire burned through this project as well, but there is quite a bit of regrowth. And so we're maintaining that. We also maintain the road here, this fire road for the Los Padres, and just so that we can have access back here. Apologize for the poor quality here. I don't know why it's buffering so poorly. And then I'm just going to take you over to another project that we will, this is another maintenance project that we'll be working on again. This is Matilaha Canyon, and this is that last community before you get to the gate up here in Matilaha. This is a temporary refuge area right here. And this really is meant for firefighters and people responding to fires in Matilaha Canyon to seek refuge if they need to, kind of it's a last ditch kind of effort to be in here so they can safely be in here. And then once the fire front passes, go out and engage the fire again. Over here, this is we call it a shaded fuel break. No, typically you don't do shaded fuel breaks in the brush just because the brush usually isn't that big, and it's kind of a concept that not many people do. Mostly you do it in larger trees, like oak trees are a good example of that, or just somewhere where there's more taller trees and you can take out the understory. But we did take out the understory in here and keep the taller trees or the taller brush in there. There's manzanita and some other brush in there that is taller. And so this burned during the Thomas Fire. And when it burned through here, everything around it was just completely gone. It was just black sticks. And in through here, the tops of the brush were still green, and it had just kind of moved through here. And Matilaha Canyon was really fortunate to where the fire behavior kind of burned over this way, back through here, and back down the slope towards the community, and also crossed over here. And they had the winds in their favor. So it's another project that we will be maintaining again. We have a couple of more projects that we've done in the past, but I'm not going to talk about those just because we aren't currently maintaining them. The next project is one project in 3 different areas. And this is truly a cooperative project with the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy. And I noticed Vivon Crawford is on the meeting as well. And she's been working with this, contracting out the work. And the money comes from CAL FIRE, and it is kind of like a pass-through grant through our fire department to this. So this is an arundo removal project. I don't know, maybe many of you have driven by this over here off of Creek Road. This is the Ojai Valley Inn. Oh, it's also in cooperation with the Ojai Valley Inn too. I should have mentioned that. And so there's this arundo removal project right here that's just finished up, this little section right here. And this project's great because the Ojai Valley Inn is going to actually do some restoration in here too. So this arundo is being moved over to here, over by the Honor Farm, and our next arundo project, which will be here. We're removing some arundo in here. And this is all, if you've driven by here, it's stacked arundo. And what we were doing is we're borrowing a air curtain burner from the state parks. And this air curtain burner, if you're not familiar with that, when you burn any material in it, it has a little curtain that goes over it. So it really is almost a complete combustion, complete consumption of the fuel. So there's not a lot of carbon that escapes very little. So it's a much cleaner way to burn, but pretty labor intensive. And but we are getting that air curtain burner soon, and we'll start burning all of that stacked up arundo in there. And then they'll start working on this area in here. And then the last part of it is down here at Nye Ranch. And these, this geometry or this shapes that I put in here aren't exact. I just drew them in freehand. So they haven't been walked or anything, but this is the general idea, Casita Springs, and they're going to be removing the arundo in here and then stacking it over here at that Stillhead Preserve, and we'll be burning it there for this project, which will be great. And I do have better maps of those 3 areas that I can show that. Hopefully you can see that. Tell me if you can't. I think you can though. So this is that first area, the arundo. This is mapped arundo that the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy has mapped, this whole area.
Hey, Selena.
This is the, yeah.
It's still on the live map.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'll just leave it then.
Okay.
Because I don't think I'm going to be able to share it, because there was nothing at the bottom there that was allowing me to share any differently. So I'll just leave it at that. But if you look at these areas, it's kind of, it seems odd that it's kind of like a mix and match. But the reason why we did it is because we received some funding from CAL FIRE, and we had to have some place where the environmental aspect of it was already completed, so we could just get to work. And luckily, the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy was able to get the environmental, able to use the environmental compliance from the watershed, Ventura County watershed. So that's how we were able to do those projects. And chunking those up is better than not having it. And also, Vivon could talk to this better, but the Ojai Valley Land Conservancy received a grant in this last round of funding that will work on getting the environmental compliance for the entire Ventura watershed. So we can go in and take out the arundo when we get funding for it, and it'll enable them to get other grant funding. Last 2 projects I'll talk about. We have a project up here at Red Mountain, but it's just in the beginning phases. I didn't even map it here, but we have been talking with the landowner, and eventually we're going to do a little prescribed fire over in this area. And there's a lot of mustard over there, and we're going to try to burn it just to see how it goes, and hopefully get something more native in there. And then along here, there's a lot of dead and down oak trees that has a large fuel load. And so we're going to go in there, and we're not taking all of it out. We'll leave some for habitat, but we're taking quite a bit of it out and chipping it along here, just because if we leave it in the way it is, these oak trees, when there's another fire, those oak trees that are standing, they have so much dead and down around them that it could cause them to have a hard time recovering from that next fire. Another project that we're doing is just this little area. It's going to be like another community buffer down here along the 33. And this will be goat grazing as well. So that's all the fuel reduction projects we have in the Ojai Valley. We do other roads in the Ojai Valley, in the Ojai Valley watershed. And one of those is that Sulphur Mountain Road. We maintain that all the way through. For them, we maintain Red Mountain Road. We also, on occasion, will help with this Laguna fire road up here when we need it. And that's it for that part. How am I doing? I'm doing great on time. I was going to just go over really quickly.
Yeah,
Since
you
I
have time.
I administer the grants for CAL FIRE, and they haven't advertised them yet, but they will soon, hopefully. They're saying mid-December is the last I heard. Can you see my screen again? Or is it not doing it?
No, just the live map.
Okay, let's see.
If you hit the little arrow next to the share screen on the right hand, all your open tabs should pop up. I know I have like a million open right now.
Okay, so the share screen, and then I thought I was sharing the entire screen, but I guess I could do window. Go here, share. Okay, is that sharing now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so this is the CAL FIRE grants page. And if you just Google CAL FIRE grants, you'll find this, but it's a wildfire prevention grants. And they have some great information on here. There's this webinar that talks all about how to apply, and it says when, but they haven't actually advertised that yet because this is older, but it's still good information if you would like to look at that. But the grant cap for each grant will be 5 million. So there's a lot of money out there. And also they upped the equipment purchase that you could do from 200,000 to 350,000. And equipment is equipment over $5,000 on that. So this is their page. I'll just run you through it just super quick. There are these tutorials in here. You can click on any of these and learn more about how to apply and how to map your project in the program. Come down here, has the different types of grants: hazardous fuel reduction grants, wildfire prevention grants, education. And then they also have, this is a newer one. It's comparing the prevention grants compared to forest health, because they also have a lot of money in forest health. And typically, the Southern California doesn't receive forest health grants because of the, I guess, the forest part of it. But they're trying to figure out how to make it work in Southern California and in the chaparral. So this would be a great one for people to look at, mostly because it's, going for that forest health and not just connected to wildfire. And these are all the forms too. So it has, if you click down on any of these, it has a procedural guides, application, scope of work, because you can see what these are. And then also in these, it has the list of the recipient list for past grants. And these are for all of them. So that's a good thing to look at too if you are interested in applying for one of these grants, is to see what has been funded for other areas. You just click on those. And they have them for all since 1718. And if you are interested, I would definitely subscribe to those email updates. All right, that's it for the grants. Next, I'm just going to hit really quickly on what Larry was talking about earlier. This is the fire hazard severity zone maps. And this update will be coming out. Larry put this in the chat, but I'll just say this is an update that hasn't been updated since 2009. And this update that's coming up right now is just for the state responsibility area, not for the local responsibility area yet. That's coming, but that's not what this is. This is for the state responsibility area. And the public comment period will be from December 9th and it ends January 31st, 2023. But that's just for the SRA. But there's all, the information on here, like why they're doing it and why it matters. And the elements of it too. Goes over the elements of what the hazard elements are: vegetation, topography, climate, crown fire potential, ember production and movement, and fire history. Is how they figure out what these how they figure out the fire hazard severity zones. Okay. All right, that is all I have. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Celine.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it's great to see about upcoming funding updates from CAL FIRE. I know I have my eyes on the urban forestry funding that's about to come out. So yeah, I encourage anyone who is interested in funding to look at the past fiscal years RFPs and kind of see what they're about. Oh, let me start the video so you can see me. And if anyone has any questions for Celine, feel free to drop them in the chat. If not, oh, looks like that's it. If not, I'll open it up for the participants. So anyone who has any general questions, general updates from the community, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. I know we had a lot of great presentations today and a lot of information. And I encourage everyone to click on the websites and oh, we talk. Okay, Yvonne, let me allow you to talk.
Hi, Des.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for all the great presentations today. Really great to hear about everything that's going on. I just wanted to chime in on Celine's kind of presentation about all the Arundel work we're doing. You know, it's in progress. You can see it live if you drive over the bridge. So feel free to, you know, swing by and check that out. It's really exciting. It's about 23 acres of Arundel that we're removing this fall. So it's a big effort, which is great. And, you know, permits coming down the line, which is awesome. One thing that is some new news, I actually haven't told Celine this, so Celine, this will be new to you too. OVLC did also receive another grant from CAL FIRE through the Workforce and Business Development grant series. So we received notice of some more funding for our Rewild Ojai initiative to grow our native plant nursery. So all these great projects we're talking about will have more capacity to provide a much larger number of plants, do more seed conservation, more restoration on lands beyond our own. So really exciting stuff coming down the line. And feel free, I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, it's great to see the overhead map of all the Arundel being removed from the watershed. That's awesome.
Really cool stuff. Yeah. Thanks, Des.
Yeah. And also the curtain burner was super interesting. I'm excited to hear about that. I know it's always difficult to know what to do with the biomass once you remove all that Arundel.
Yeah, I have an image of it in my head, but I have no idea what it's actually going to look like. So I'm really excited as well. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Renee, let me allow you to talk. Hey, Renee. Do you have a question? You could unmute yourself. I'll ask you to unmute. Hey, Renee, if you had a question, feel free to unmute and ask it. If not, you could put your hand down. All right, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask them. If not, I think we're going to wrap up here. Thank you to all the presenters, the panelists. You guys were great and gave us some great information about our surrounding communities and things going on here. This recording is going to be posted to our website. And everyone have a great day. Enjoy the rain. Bye-bye.